Thank you so much for joining us today for this session when we talk about an enormously important aspect of baby loss, which is the clinical care and confidence in supporting parents through baby loss at any gestation, at any stage in pregnancy or in infancy. What can we do better as a community to help educate and support care professionals in bettering the service and support and options that we provide for families? Joining us today, we have two wonderful women from the UAE Love Through Loss community. I'm going to ask you both just to introduce yourselves. I know, Nikki, you've joined us in a session before already today, and just why you are part of the Love Through Loss community in brief, and then we will go to tackling some of the things that we've all discussed. Talitha, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. I just need the microphones keep muting. My apologies. We're going to need to unmute you both again. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. So I'm Dr. Talitha Thomas, and I am a family doctor and healthcare educator. So I come at this from that side, but also I have 3 children, one of whom is living. Her name is Sylve, and then I have 2 sons that passed away last year due to TTTS. So my family has a lot of experience in the hospital setting through the NICU. And then I personally also have had experience just in the hospital as a clinician.
Thank you very much. And we're really grateful to have you here and to entrust us a little bit with the story of your 2 precious boys as well, who are held very dear to us at the Love Through Loss community. And Nikki, Oliver, I will just get you to introduce yourself and what brings you here and your passion for the Love Through Loss initiatives that we have.
So my name is...
We can't hear you.
I'm not on... You can't hear me?
Okay, we
I can hear you, Nikki.
You can hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, I will let you carry on speaking then in that case. My
as long as one person can hear me.
As long as someone can.
So my name is Nikki. I am a midwife and a self-appointed bereavement midwife, as I may have mentioned in other sessions. And I became part of Love Through Loss because, especially since moving over to this side of the world, I noticed that there is there's just no support for women throughout this time, and there's not really much training or support given to the professionals who are actually, whose job it is to provide this support. So a lot of the time they can't give what they don't know or they don't understand. So that led me to get a lot more involved with Love Through Loss.
Fantastic. So I'm going to begin with you, Talitha. Perhaps you can share a little bit about the feelings perhaps around the care that you received, anything that you felt was what it meant to you as both a parent and as a clinician, and what your feeling was and what your training was, perhaps an experience within being able to support others through this situation, and what that brought up for you during your own experience of loss with your boys.
Yeah, thanks, Ola. So I think that one thing that was helpful to me in my journey through medicine, and then with my sons as well, is that I went to med school here. So I kind of went in aware of the different maybe dynamics between the healthcare sector and patients. And so some of the things that were really helpful to me were just like some of the doctors were really kind and compassionate towards us, which I think is obviously very necessary. Especially when you consider, so like as a family doctor, I see a variety of patients. Some of them have like a stub toe. So perhaps you don't need as much compassion for someone who just stubbed their toe. Whereas in the case of sons in the NICU, you need utmost compassion. And so one of the things that I really appreciated experiencing and then felt a lack of with some other doctors was just that it's like so important to see the personhood of the patient, whether they're a day old or 50 years old. Some of the things we heard were like, you can have more children, but children aren't replaceable. They're small, but they're still human beings. And I think that as we consider a compassionate care guide for hospital staff, this is really important, that medical facts must be tempered with empathy. That you're right, like it's true. I did have a baby after my son's passed away, so that was medically true. But that doesn't mean that that was an okay thing to say, because it was a fact, but it was not at all tempered with empathy.
I think that's really, really important within that. And I think that this is something that I know, you and I are going to be speaking later in friends and family and the wider community. And I know that there are so many crutch sentences that people go to and respond to loss with that begin with at least. I mean, nothing good ever began with the sentence at least. And it's not in the healthcare provider's remit to try to fix with those words. It is, as you say, it is imparting knowledge and information with deep compassion. And I think it's recognizing in yourself what it brings up, because I think this is one of the things that within your training, was there a lot around the breaking of devastating news? Was there a lot around that role play aspect of how to have conversations like that empathetically and with confidence?
Yeah, I think I was in med school for 5 years and I did a year internship, so 6 years. I probably had maybe like 1 or 2 sessions about maybe bereavement, or if a patient passes away, or breaking news to family. So like, how many hours did I spend for 6 years? And then I had maybe 2 hours of training in this.
Nikki, I'm going to come to you because you trained in the UK, and I'm very mindful of not trying to compare, contrast and compare here. We're trying to work out, what are ways that we can help, because I don't think anybody ever, no one ever sets out with the intention to break someone's heart, to do any harm at all.
No.
Quite literally, the pledges first do no harm. But I think that we are, as a society, still deeply uncomfortable about talking about these areas, about sitting within them, and especially about spending time. And the grief of losing a baby is one of those ones that is so against the natural order of events. None of us ever expect that we will outlive our children, and whether they are 5 weeks into pregnancy, whether they are in NICU, whether they are in infancy and childhood, it's just such a devastating grief for those reasons. But Nikki, what was your experience around training around bereavement? You say you're a self-appointed bereavement midwife. Tell us a little bit more about kind of what that looks like. What formal avenues are there out there? And perhaps what do we need to look at creating in order to give healthcare providers the confidence to really interact and hold space for families within this?
So, yeah, like I said, self-appointed, and it's more just I took the knowledge from my training and my clinical practice in the UK and brought it here. Mm-hmm. I was lucky. I don't know if every midwifery degree is the same in the UK. I imagine it would be because it's curriculum based, but it's not about compare and contrast. It's just that educational facilities in different countries, they structure things differently. It's just different. It's not bad. It's like not great, but just different. And that's okay. But it also, not everything moves at the same pace. And we know that. And we know, like, we're a prime example of that here, where we know that the bereavement care for professionals is just not in keeping with how often women are going through this heartbreaking time. What needs to be done is we just need to kind of do more stuff like this initially. So talk about it more. Mm-hmm. And it would be, I mean, in my ideal world, it would be mandatory training every year that has to be revisited, that gives clinicians confidence to, I've seen consultants of 30 years not be able to break bad news to a family, not be able to say the words, like, that's not okay. It's not their fault necessarily, because if you say like 6 years worth of training and you got 2 days max, no, 2 hours max of whatever, you know, like, how are you supposed to do that? So we need to bring in like really structured multidisciplinary training to give clinicians the confidence to be in that space, or the confidence to go, this has happened to me. I am not the best person to give this family top tier care. I need to step back and let somebody else come in and fill that space. So it's not necessarily just having the confidence to be there. It's having the confidence to know that you are out of your depth, and to just say nothing, take a step back, and let's reassess the situation.
I think that's really, really important in here, is that, you know, recognizing whether this is an area that you feel strong and able to step into. And then if not, being able to speak to colleagues, having that supportive environment within this workspace to say, I can't, let me find someone who can within that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, you know, obviously we are at Love Through Loss with these 2 wonderful women, we are looking at creating at the moment a fully multidisciplinary and holistic and comprehensive full day training to be able to support professionals, because as we've said, I think everybody wants to be able to better support families. Talitha, from training out here, one of the amazing things about where we live is we've got the most beautiful cultural and religious tapestry of families in the region. Do you think that that impacts on care? Do you think that that comes into a care provider's perhaps familiarity with end-of-life care, and is that something, and I'm very mindful of, you know, that there is no one right way to do this, but just I think that is sometimes we don't understand and fully comprehend different cultural and religious approaches to end-of-life care, to repatriation, cremation, funeral logistics, and I think that can make the bereavement protocols, the support protocols for families, quite complex as well.
Yeah, that's totally true. I think I'm just thinking of after my sons passed away, Hosea passed away before Malachi. And so we went through the process of taking their body from the hospital mortuary to the government one, and then from there to the like non-Muslim cemetery. And it was all very confusing because we're not from here. And thankfully we had a friend who like really figured out everything for us, but many of the things didn't necessarily make sense, and we didn't receive any instruction. There was one point where they kind of like pushed me through a door at the government mortuary, and my son was just like lying on the table being washed by some man, and I didn't know I was going to see that, and it was like really horrifying. Just to suddenly come upon that. And then later I learned that this is potentially part of some people's ritual for death and burial. So I think maybe they just wanted to give us that opportunity, but we weren't given any instruction. And so it was kind of like sudden and horrifying. So I do think that in a country like this, where we have so many different people of different backgrounds, it would be super helpful to have clear instructions, just even from a secular point, that like these are the things that happen, and then religiously maybe some options of what you could do but don't have to do.
I think that's a really enormously valid point there, is that clear protocols are really important. There's an element of your care that's going to be having clear bereavement pathways in place. And I'm going to come back to you a second on that, Nikki, because I know you're very passionate about this. And I think there's also going to be an enormous element that needs to be parent-led. And when I say parent-led, it means that the care providers need to have confidence in saying, these are what the options are, and this is what's available to you, and these are support avenues. For example, we're going to be speaking to Middle East assistants tomorrow around the logistical support side of things, because I think, as you've attested to there, Talitha, it can be incredibly complex to navigate, and it's something that none of us, you know, no matter how long you've lived here or how brief a time you've lived here or whether you're from here, I don't think many of us expect or discuss openly what happens to if one of us dies, or what happens if we lose a child. I mean, we are so far from this being in the mainstream conversation. That's certainly something that I don't think the majority of families have had that conversation, even if, as you say, you were in that situation where you had two very poorly babies. They were poorly in pregnancy and through neonatal. I'm assuming it was still, as you've just said, it all, as it unfolded, you were learning things as you went along. And you as a medical professional, seeing your son like that was a very confronting experience. And I think this is something that we've heard a lot from families, that you go from perhaps this expectation of being cared for and supported and kind of held together by your medical professionals. And then you're out into this system of going through the government mortuaries, or perhaps the police mortuaries, which can feel deeply, deeply unfamiliar if you don't have someone. And thank goodness you had a friend to be able to help support you through that. And I think these are where really clear pathways, right from the breaking of the news through to supporting families with onward care, could be so beneficial. And Nikki, I'm going to come to you a little on that, because I know this is something that you're very, very keen to see. What might that look like?
So it is quite tricky because of where we live, and like you say, this a melting pot of cultures and things like that. I think you really like hit the nail on the head with being parent led, and especially for things to do with culture and religion. Even within one culture, there's so many different ways that people do things. So asking the parents, is there a member of your family or a religious leader that I can then have these conversations with that align with your wishes? Because not everybody, I mean, theoretically, I'm Catholic, would, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to follow those traditions to the letter. And you've got to really like remember that with every religion, is that it looks different for everybody. So using family, like asking family members if dad is not mentally able to just have those conversations with you, asking for them, okay, do you have a family member? Do you have a religious leader that you're willing to let me have these conversations with and guide it?
I think this is part of what we want to put together, isn't it? A really comprehensive way of, these are some of the things, some of the themes, some of the traditions that may come up within this religion. And this is what it may look like for someone who doesn't identify with that, and what their options are and who to contact. If we take it back to kind of the more immediacy of caring for families through that, let's talk about breaking the news. For example, we've just this morning heard from the stillbirth. We had a session on stillbirth. One of our mums spoke so bravely about finding out the news that her son had died. Is there a clear protocol about what that looks like, and a way that you would like to see that? Because I would imagine that time is, you know, the mums within the session spoke to the fact that they can't comprehend how much time passed during that, because everything is so distorted when you're in that depth of shock. Nikki, can you speak to a little bit about what that experience could look like or does look like currently?
So in terms of like from a midwife point of view, so it's usually from like miscarriage, stillbirth point of view. I won't go into sort of neonatal side, but when somebody comes in and there's been reduced movements, for example, they know, women are very intuitive, they know something's not quite right. Like, and I always trust that. If someone says to me something's just not right, I'm like, yeah, okay, you know. But it's how, just from the get-go, you can usually tell within a minute to 2 minutes as a midwife if you're not being able to pick up baby's heart rate, for example. Now, messing around for 10 minutes with machines, doing this, doing that, not appropriate. Also, in the way where we are in the world, we want to escalate straight to a consultant. And this is what I notice a lot of women are saying, is that, oh, well, they got another machine and they got another midwife and then they got the doctor, but then they called the consultant. No, these women know something's wrong. As midwives, you know, even if you haven't had it officially confirmed, we're trained to know. And
what might your language in that moment to those parents look like? What
so instead of saying, for example, like just some of the things that we've heard, I can't find the baby's heartbeat, I'm going to get another midwife, or I'm going to get the doctor. Don't worry, it'll be fine. None of this. It's not fine because they're here. They've come in. They know things are not fine, or they at least suspect they might not be fine. So any false reassurances should not be given. And to be honest, after about 90 seconds to 2 minutes of not being able to find a heart rate, me personally, what I would like to see is going, I'm really sorry, I'm struggling to find baby's heartbeat. I know this is really scary, but I'm just going to go and ask the doctor to come and help me, and we'll use a scan. So we cut out all this mess in between and we go directly to something diagnostic, because that's all mum and dad want. They don't want someone coming in and then another one coming in and then another one coming in. They want an answer. They want that. That's why they've come. And when it comes to breaking bad news, it should come from the consultant, especially over here, the way the hierarchy of medical professionals works. However, if they cannot say directly, I am very sorry, there's no heartbeat, I'm afraid your baby has died, then we have a problem. So I've had to break the news on multiple occasions in this country to people, to families, because clinicians aren't willing to say the word. They will use any other terminology: sleeping, gone, not there, which first of all is so unprofessional, but second of all, we should never, ever leave the woman in doubt of what her situation is, as awful as her situation is. And when we break news to people, instead of rushing to get them to make a decision, we leave, we step back. I will always stand in a corner, or I will stand right outside the door. I can stand there for 5 hours if I need to. If they want me, they know where I am, but it is not the time, unless there is absolute emergency on mum's side. There is no reason that we're in there bombarding them.
Thank you very much for sharing that. We've got such an enormous range of potentials and possibilities when it comes to baby loss. Obviously we've kind of touched a little bit more on stillbirth. I think one of the areas that we see and we know is heartbreakingly common within baby loss is miscarriage. The CDC and talks about this as pregnancy loss before 20 weeks, the UK before 24, WHO and UNICEF before 28. So just the fact that there's so much mixed messaging within the world around it is very challenging. Within that, we've talked a little bit to parents about, you know, being in a space with other parents or hearing other babies crying. Talitha, I just want to speak to you in that when you went through that, your boys were in NICU. Were you still in the hospital yourself at that time? What kind of space were you given and supported to have, and what sort of space would you see would be appropriate for parents who have either just been given that news at any stage or gestation in pregnancy, or in NICU where perhaps that parent has been discharged, but hopefully is being supported, and we will talk about memory making in another session, to have that time to process and with their baby?
Yeah, so I think I was kind of in maybe a unique situation. That I think it was one of the largest NICUs in the UAE. And that hospital did have many clinicians from different, I guess, hospitals abroad. And so when my son Hosea passed away, they did a lot. We had no clue. Of course, we didn't prepare for this. So they gave us his handprints and footprints, his hair. I asked for the blanket that they had wrapped him in, and they gave that to us. And there was a room assigned for like breaking bad news, or even just like for doctors to talk to the patients or the parents, I guess. And they just gave us that room and told us we could spend as much time as we wanted and with his body. And then even later on, the doctors were really open to us coming by any time, and they could even get him out of the mortuary, which we didn't opt for, but that was a really beautiful option, I think. There was before our sons passed away, we found out like what it would look like if and when they did, because there was like a blue curtain that would come around the incubator when it was like a dire situation. And so every time we would see that, we knew like something horrible is going on. We would see patients or parents crying, which, and I understand you can't have like one incubator per room. Like this is going to happen. But I do really appreciate that there was a room that they almost immediately took us to, in order to just, spend as much time as we wanted, with our son. I will say they gave us that space, but they kept coming in like to give us paperwork to sign and to ask for documents and stuff. And some of the people that came in even laughed and said, like, how are you doing? Which was really horrifying. And didn't make any sense. They knew how we were doing, I think. And they didn't even need to necessarily say anything. But just to allow us to hold the space. So some doctors did that really well. Some of them, just really, at the very least, needed to not laugh.
It goes without saying at the very least. And I think this is where some of the things, like some of the visuals we have that can so easily indicate to anyone who's walking past that room, who's near that room, that there is a bereavement and that extra sensitivity is prudent. Nikki, I'm very mindful that we're just about to finish, and I thank you so much for both of you joining this session. Can I just get you just to very quickly finish off by speaking to kind of that postpartum care, the appropriateness of where that woman should be cared for, who, and what onward signposting should be, in a very quick minute.
Okay, very quick minute. For me, non-negotiable is not being put on a postnatal ward. It is highly inappropriate. And with ongoing care, I always suggest that 1 or 2 midwives are assigned, especially over here where postnatal midwifery isn't really a thing. You take them off the labor ward, you have 2 core people, and you have such continuity, such tight continuity for that postpartum period while the family is in hospital. And anyone who wants to enter the room only does so through the midwife. That's it. So you're really controlling that environment just for the family to be in it, how they need to be in it, instead of having it like Piccadilly Circus.
And midwifery-led care postpartum, no matter which ward you are on, you still have
regardless of whether it's a term loss or it's 12 weeks. Everyone who has a pregnancy deserves a midwife at every point of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for both of you for sharing, and especially Talitha for sharing about Hosea and Malachi. They're always so cherished within our community. We've scratched the surface. There is so much we need to say, so much that needs to be done. But I hope this is just the start of that conversation. So thank you both for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.